moments. So we're going to look far ahead at Jon Jones and Alexander Gustafsson. Rematch. Many things to look at with Jones-Gustafsson. Many, many things to look at, including rematch. Rematches are unique experiences, unique moments. They are connected to the last ones, but they're independent of them as well. The last one, how many times do we see, one guy knock another guy out in 2 minutes and the next one be 25 minutes, or, a 25-minute crazy close fight and somebody chokes them out. You know what I mean? We see this a lot. We see the same thing happen again. We see completely different things happen. They're independent, individual moments in time. Also, when TJ was fighting Cody Garbrandt, not even the second time, the first time, because of how much they had trained together, there were things that happened in rematches that were already happening in their first fight. And I asked TJ, I mentioned to TJ that Cody had told me I was there for, I think I might have been there for both, but I was definitely there for their first fight. That Cody said, I know what this guy does, and I'm gonna walk him into things and catch him. And I said, does the fact that he thinks he knows what you do, have you and Dwayne built some things to take advantage of that? And he smiled. It's like, oh yeah, Robin, man, of course we have. That is exactly what we've done. And basically, what I'm saying is, sometimes I will learn something about you, which will allow me to defeat you or to have better moments against you. And sometimes I will learn something about you that I believe I will make a plan based on that thing that I know about you, but you will anticipate that I will make that move or change or build that strategy or that footwork or that combination to trap you, and you will anticipate that, and you will fake the thing to draw that thing to counter that thing. And if you right now think that what I'm saying is an exaggeration, it is an under-exaggeration by a long shot. A deep under-exaggeration. This is what is happening. This is what these guys do. If you are listening to the podcast or the long form, if you're not, this peek at Jon Jones versus Gustafsson is part of a long form podcast and YouTube piece called Enjoy the Hostilities. And I mentioned earlier Mark Henry. I did a breakdown on Frankie Edgar versus Chad Mendes. And John Ramdeen and I were at that show, and it was
the tough finale.
Yeah, the tough finale. Fight started about 40 minutes later than we were anticipating, and we were there, and we had front row tickets, front row center for Rogan's show. And Mendes and Frankie come out, they throw a few shots, they move around a little bit, and Frankie sets up Chad to land this hard overhand right, and then this left hook that jars him and puts him down. And then we jumped up, and we were like, wow, that was crazy, and then we jumped in a cab, and we made it to Rogan's show, second joking, which was killer. But I did a breakdown of that, of how Frankie drew out the right hand, and Chad's right hand is coming at him. And as he slipped his head off the line and walked Chad into his right hand. And I put that one out. It's since been removed. Any of the stuff using UFC footage ended up having to be removed. That's another story. They have a policy that doesn't allow people to use their video in that way. But Mark Henry sent me a text after and was talking to me about how much work it is, how much work it was specifically to see how Chad, and I'm not giving anything away. This is, I think he's talked about it since. And plus this is years ago. So there's deeper layers in this. But Mark Henry sent me a text to say that you analyze how wide Chad walks you into his right hand. And then the goal would be then you can either be inside of it and avoid it, or you can choose to go even wider, right? So he's walking. If I slip my head to this side, normally I would slip the right hand and it would be here, and Mendez would throw the right hand here and catch me. They identified that because they're brilliant and they did hard work and, they enjoyed the challenge. And so instead of, if we slip out here, we walk into it, sometimes people will then choose to slip inside and land something else. They trained Frankie to, where the normal right hand goes here, Chad's right hand goes here, to train Frankie to slip all the way wide outside the right hand, and then walk him in with a wide shot, right? So Chad goes wide. They go, instead of going inside and avoiding it, they go even wider, both with their own head and with the corresponding hand to land it. It's not the most complex idea in the world, but it's risky. You know how you minimize that risk? You just fucking train the shit out of it. You train, prepare until it becomes normal. And he's like, do you know how hard it is to take these athletes that are this good and at something and make them do it? You have to do it thousands, tens of thousands of times. But they did it, and it worked. They figured out where he went, and they did something unpredictable. He's wide, go even wider. And they trained him hard until that's what he did. And he did it on the night. And that's what Jones and Gustafsson at their best will be doing. And I'll tell you, that's what Greg Jackson does. So, but he's also not going to do it to a point that you live and die by it. Because what if they do the same? And if you think this sounds crazy, detailed, complex, go talk. And some of you enjoy multiple arts and sports and stuff. But if you don't, go talk to some of your friends who are as deep into football as you are into martial arts. They'll tell you that everybody's arms racing each other and taking information that they learned about the other to change something. And the other is trying to anticipate the change that they made based on what they believe about us. And this is what happens. This is what Greg Jackson's doing right now. This is what Gustafsson and his people are doing. They are doing that. And as a result, and sometimes if both arms races move just as far, then you go right back to guts and heart and skill and ability to dish it out and take it and all those things that we saw in the first fight. But other times that shit ends in a second. It just ends like when Frankie caught Chad. Chad didn't make any mistakes. Frankie and Mark Henry created a scenario under which Chad doing the correct thing was now in a new environment, in a new context, was a mistake. And so that is the early thing to look for and think about. And why does that matter? Well, it matters for a lot of reasons. It matters because it's interesting. It matters because, as is the case with most things about the way I want to study martial arts for my happiness, is it teaches us what we can do in other things in your life. But it also matters because this is how we break the plateaus of saying, well, in their last fight, let's look at some footage. And I know we want to look at that footage. And me and Mark are going to put together a scenario under which we can do that. And I know that people do that. And I know that is interesting and fun. But truthfully, you must assume that if some guy who talks about fighting is looking at something that Jones did, quote, wrong, or Gustafsson did, quote, wrong, that you don't think those guys did it. So you can't expect to see it. So when we contextualize that now, I'm not saying it's because, we can't show you the footage from that last fight and use it. Of course we can, and of course we will. But that is not the be-all, end-all, because if it was, then why on earth can we recognize those things that we think could be fixed, but they can't? They've been looking at that fight. Greg Jackson's probably looked at that fight 100 times. Probably looked at that fight a fucking 100 times. And he's probably made adjustments and readjustments to those adjustments based on what he thinks that they've learned. And if that sounds complicated, it is, but it's also awesome. We don't have to understand everything. We don't have to guess everything they made. We just have to know that's what they're doing. Because if we know that's what they're doing, now, instead of saying, well, who's going to win? We go, okay, well, this is what they're doing. What's it going to look like? Was there some advantage deep inside that didn't exist? And if he thinks there is, will we have repaired it? Or are we going to hurt him for that? Oh my God. And it starts to get, the possibilities start to open up. And once the possibilities start to open up, your imagination goes, and that's when you start learning and theorizing and thinking, trial, error. You see all possibilities, and that's what that's what's so beautiful about it, because, you try to anticipate your life. It's impossible. You drive yourself crazy, Mark and I have a call with a company about, our YouTube and our podcast, and about maybe some sponsorships and some ads and some other things they can do. That's cool, man. You know how much time I spent other than seeing who they were, thinking about it? Almost none. Because I'll drive myself fucking crazy thinking about that. I got a call with One Championship coming up in a couple of days. And I already had one last week. I start anticipating that. You can't. You just can't. You can't. Well, no, sorry, you can. But it'll make yourself crazy. But if you can start thinking about how millions of possibilities, and all of them could be interesting and fascinating and beautiful and fun and exciting and scary and painful and all those things, and you're okay with it, that's the beauty in looking at these fights. My wife and I went to an art show the other day. And I didn't sit there trying to figure out exactly what every painting meant. I don't know very much about paintings. I enjoy them. I like them. I know a couple little things here and there, but I'm not going to argue about, what it means with somebody else. I'm going to just take it in and see how beautiful it is and be inspired by it and let it open up all these possibilities for my brain. And I'm not saying you have to look at fighting that way, by no means, but it's one way you could. It's definitely one way you could. Unlimited possibilities. And with each one, man, there was something really, really, what fights were last weekend? What were the last two fights last weekend?
Anthony Smith versus Ozdemir and Lobov versus Michael Johnson.
Yeah. So Anthony Smith versus Ozdemir. I was watching it with the editor. I was at TSN and I was watching it with the editor. And there was one scenario that happened. And he said, well, what could have happened there? And I said, well, if he did this in this moment, then he would have ended up on top here. And then he goes, wow, and that would have just been like a completely different parallel universe. And I was like, dude, I love the way you think. Of course. Like, when we look, see, I told you Khabib was going to win. I told you McNugget would. Well, yeah, but in a parallel universe where that one punch is not slipped, everything is different. There's 100 million fights in every fight because, you just made one error or you just did one thing right. And if you didn't do it right, that thing changed. And that in no way undermines the genius of the winner or in no way minimizes the responsibility of the guy who made a mistake. This is just fucking life, man. There's a million possibilities at any time, each one with a universe of its own. Think of that. Think of that when you look at John Jones versus Gustafsson. My last thought just on that is I'll see Dan Hardy or somebody else brilliant. I'll use Dan as an example because I really like Dan. Dan will post something. I think John Jones, something. And somebody else say, Dan, I got to disagree. I'm not saying don't disagree, but I am saying when a doctor tells me about fucking a lung disease, and I once saw a TV show about a guy with lung disease, I'm not going to disagree with that doctor and then argue with him. I'm going to ask the doctor for more information. Why is that? What do you mean? Where'd that come from? What does that mean? I'm not going to just go, well, what are you talking about, man? Jones won last time. He's going to win this time. Nah. I'm going to look at all this amazing shit that could possibly happen. So when you walk into an art show, you can feel its beauty. And when you watch this fight, you can, anything can happen because we have almost no information whatsoever. Now, my last, and I know I just said last, but my last piece on that is you might say, well, what are you talking about? We have 25 minutes. Yeah, we got 25 minutes. How long ago? We got 25 minutes.
Was that in 2000?
5 years and 3 months ago. 63 months ago. And since that time, and people I mentioned something, but that Anthony Smith could compete with John Jones. Didn't say he'd win. I just said he could compete with him. And somebody's like, yeah, but John Jones is John Jones. And my answer to that is he? Is he? Is he John Jones? I know his name is John Jones, and I know he's that guy, but you haven't seen that fucking guy fight in 16 months. You don't know. And even things about him, and, he's dealing with his problems, or, he's, gone, he went to some type of facility for this, or, so people could know him say, he seems so calm and adjusted. That might not be good. Not for the purpose of beating guys senseless. And I don't just mean having an ornery streak or not one. Who you are, it changes. Through all of the things you go through, all the things you change all the time. And if Jones changes too much, even in seemingly good ways, he may not be John Jones. And that's conversation for when we come back. I'll try to get Mullins, and I'm talking to my friend, Dr. David Klonsky. Dave, what's up? I'm talking to him this week. I'm going to have a conversation. He's a psych professor, PhD. I'm going to have some conversations with him about that and with Mullins, because really good standard of life, quality of life improvements may not make you better at cage fighting. They might not. Think about it. Think about that. Think about that, my friends. And any thoughts on that? I'm going to try to do a little Periscope chat on that before the next time. The concept that quality of life or better, becoming more easygoing or less stressed or more, law abiding or whatever you want, that might not make you a better cage fighter. Not necessarily. Let's think about that, and let's chat about it on Periscope before the next time we shoot. Between now and then, I think I'm going to New York. Then there might be a trip to Singapore to one. I'm not sure yet. And then I'm going to London, England for BKB 14 at the O2 Arena. So we're definitely going to do one or two podcasts in between then. Thank you guys so much for humoring me. Thank you for letting me explore these ideas in a non-traditional way. As I said at the beginning, this is for you guys who like that. For the people who don't, I'm sorry, I'm not going to sell out my people to change something that a small group of people love. This is for that small group of people. Thank you guys so much, and we'll be back in a week. And thank you for sharing my 1-minute breakdowns, especially on Instagram. That shit's growing insanely fast. It is at Robin Black MMA on Instagram, at Robin Black MMA on Twitter, and robinblackmma.com. Is that us, Mark? Yep. And shop robinblack.com. I'm going to try to make up a very limited amount of Bink shirts, and we'll try to get those up on there. But for now, you can buy some T-shirts there if you're so inclined. Thank you for hanging. If you're here at the end, leave me a little note and say what's up, because if you've spent this whole time, then you're my peoples. Love ya. Blackout.